John the Baptist Church is one of Newcastle's four, like, almost semi-ancient parish churches, along with St. Nicholas's Cathedral there, and St. Andrew's at the Gallowgate, and what's the other one? All Saints, of course. But this one, John the Baptist, is a very interesting church, and there's a lot of interesting people who have been associated with it through history. And it's very old, of course, going back to before the 13th century, going back to I think they've got a Norman arch in that wall from like the 1100s. A tiny little window when this was a very small stone church, Norman church, and they've still got that in there. And the other very interesting thing they've got on that wall is something called a squint, which is like a window, a cross-shaped window, a tiny little thing, that was a window from the anchorite's cell. Now, the anchorite was a hermit who was kind of locked in this cell for the whole of their life, locked in there by the bishop, sealed in, and they only had one entrance in where they could receive some food every day, like a tiny little window, and they had another little window called a squint where they could watch the mass and receive the Eucharist. So basically, it's just such an extreme form of devotion that, nobody could ever comprehend these days. But back in the 13th century, anchorites were fairly common in different churches around the country, and they were mostly women, not always, but mostly. And the famous anchorite here was a lady called Christina Umfred in 1260, and she devoted her entire life to living in that cell. So that's interesting. Some other interesting people associated with John the Baptist Church is Charles Avison, who was one of the great composers of the 18th century, great English composer, Charles Avison, and he wrote this Baroque concertos. And he's largely forgotten about now, but his music is wonderful, and he was a real celebrity of Newcastle at the time. And he was the organ player in here as well, Charles Avison. And the other famous person that was a very important person was Anna Fisher. Anne Fisher was she was a very important teacher and educationalist and a grammarian who was responsible for educating people in how the English language should be formalized into rules in that 18th century time. So she was also the founder of the Evening Chronicle. So she was a person of great zeal and great energy, and she was at the centre of the intellectual circle of Newcastle of her day, Anne Fisher, and her daughter Sarah Hodgson. She went on to really progress the Evening Chronicle, and that was back in, I think it was founded in 1764.